Thank you, everybody. Awesome. So I'm the last one and the only one, I think. So you're not here because you want to be here. You're here because you have to be here. So I apologize, but I'll try to make it as best of use of your time as I can. So we are, I represent a company called EffectiveUI. You can see it on the screen here. So we are what we really like to call is a product innovation agency. So we really help organizations figure out how to deploy all this great technology that you're seeing within all these other talks, all these platforms, all these tools. We're helping organizations really turn this into real product solving customer problems and customer needs. We do that through a variety of different skills and capabilities, customer insight, design, and development. I'll talk about what some of that means. But what I want to sort of preface this conversation with you with is that I'm not going to do a code demo. This for me is really to show you guys, you can bring your technologies, you can bring your tools and your platforms all together, but it's our belief that all of that should be founded around what core customer problems you're trying to solve and to use those tools as most effectively as possible. So I think that's really the lens that I'm coming at this from. So we, as an organization, have been around about almost 11 years at this point, and so we've seen a lot of things go really well in enterprise IT deployments. We've seen them go very poorly, and through that lens, we've built sort of a process and methodology that we think is a really successful way to think about structuring, solving big, hairy enterprise IT problems, and how to really build software that's going to solve customer need. And so what I want to talk through with you today is a little bit of our process and methodology for how we do that, how we think about it, how we sort of, really help organizations be successful in these big, complex initiatives. Yes, this is Michael Jordan on a computer. You probably don't want him building your enterprise IT applications, especially if you saw what happened when he tried baseball. But the point of it is we've seen things like this and everything in between in the last 11 years. And so, we've seen the wrong stakeholders, the wrong organizational alignment. We've seen the wrong tools, the wrong technology, the wrong platforms. We've seen, misset expectations with the business and with the IT teams. So what you're seeing here is really sort of a culmination of how we think about solving some of these core problems within the enterprise. I'm not a marketer, and I'm not claiming this is the best acronym in the world, but it sort of embodies a little bit of really how we think about solving this problem. You'll see here the concept of taking strategy, insight, design, and development and not thinking about it as sort of a phase that you go through the delivery of this software and value that you're delivering as technology teams, as developers, as technology managers is one of the most critical things that we've seen. The more that you start to think about the delivery of these tools and platforms as an integrated process that learns from itself and to iterate and sort of takes the learnings of what we learned in putting this prototype in front of the user, or what we learned from putting this platform, undesigned, anything, just put it in front of the user. What we learned from that needs to be baked into sort of the larger design process, the development iteration that's happening when you're customizing that platform, or when you're starting to integrate that into your real data or your back-end systems, whatever that is. And so what we're trying to really advocate for is that you have to move quickly. You have to take a lot of the paradigms from the lean startup model and all these other startups that are in this space, really disrupting, changing, resetting expectations around what customers want. You need to be reactive to that. You need to understand what are the opportunities that I have to move quickly within the bureaucracy and other sort of organizational gating systems that I have in my company. And, we help enable that through, deep partnership. We are, without getting into a ton of details, we're a human-centered design company, so we help organizations focus on how design can enable their customers and how design can actually solve problems from the outside and not from the inside out. So we want to bake in human-centered design into the organizations that we work with, because we know we don't want to be involved for 4 years. We want organizations to always have that point of view when they're building solutions for their customers. What do my customers want out of what I'm doing as an IT department, as a business, as a whole organization? The other is, and I mentioned this before, but delivering product quickly, right? How how do we set ourselves up as an organization to do that? And if you think through your own companies and like what you have to go through, are there gating systems? Are there review approvals that have to happen? Are there all these different things that slow us down to actually get to the real value that we're delivering to our clients? And so we want to bake some of that culture, some of that ideas of thinking fresh about how to do these things within the organizations that we work with. And as I said, it has to be baked into your teams. It can't just be something that we or some other blog that you read tells you. It's about how you actually do that day to day with your organization. And I mentioned this before. We look at it as the outside in and not the inside out. What that means to us is you're starting this bigger initiative, whatever it is, whether it's a new core banking platform, whether it is a member management portal, whatever it is, you're looking first. Oh, that's fun. You're looking first at the customer, right? You're really evaluating what are the needs of the customer, what opportunities do I have to delight them, make their life easier, better, getting them more data, better data, and more real time, less lag. I mean, whatever it is, what is the core needs of the customer? And we'll talk a little bit about how we enable that with our organizations. The second is the organization. How is the organization structured and set up to actually do this, right? And I mentioned a little bit around, are there compliance, risk, and legal gatings around how we actually get software out the door and to iterate, or with a continuous deployment integration system? Are there barriers to that, and how do we change those within the organization? And then finally, the team, right? We believe that cross-functional teams across all those organizations and business units that I talked about need to be working tightly together as a single delivery team to make sure that we're eliminating a lot of this overhead and complexity of how information is shared within the organization. And we'll talk a little bit about how we think about that as well. So the first step of the outside in of that model that I just showed is really about the user, right? We believe that focusing on the customer will provide the data and understanding to align your teams on who that customer is. And I want to talk just very briefly about a case study with Scottrade in particular, and this is relevant to the financial service space, but we enable an understanding of the user through a whole variety of different tools and methods, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but one of them is interviewing, talking to real customers, like bringing them in-house, going to them, talking over the phone, really deeply understanding using a whole bunch of different variety of research methods, really understanding who are you, what are your needs, what sort of segment marketing category do you fit in? How does that align to how we as a bank or we as a financial service provider sell to you, so that we can really deeply understand what we need to build for them and what variations potentially that we need to build to satisfy the needs of the customers that are actually using us, paying us money, using our services. For Scottrade in particular, just some numbers here. For them in particular, we were redesigning their investor management portal. So this is about 36 contextual in-home interviews, 4,000 pieces of data on these advisors and traders, what they're using the platform for, what they wish it could do, what they wish it didn't do. And then from all that data and those interviews and additional market research, we put together 15 personas and journey maps, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of a view of what that looks like. Actually, behind the screen here, you can see a persona, which really tells the story of not a person, but a persona of who's using this platform. The more that you have data like this, and it doesn't have to look like this. It can be simple, it can be easier, it can be more straightforward, not as in depth. But this gives you a really clear understanding across the whole team when you share these out. This person right here is the person I'm trying to target with the feature that I'm proposing, or the platform that I'm building, or the integration that I'm making work. I'm making Andrea's life that much better. And we see this all the time. When we put this in front of customers, in meetings, internal meetings with us, without us, they're talking about these people. They're trying to engage with these people. They may be fictional or non-fictional people, but they tie more of the value that you're adding as a developer, as an engineer, as a technology team, to value that you're bringing to the business and ultimately to the customer. And I'll flip through these very quick. This is a journey map of how customers engage with Scottrade in this particular example. And don't be nervous about the complexity and a lot of the content here, that they have a really complex workflow for a variety of reasons. This is a very vast distillation of of how they think about their business. So it's a really good targeted thing for them. But I wanted to give you a sense of what it looks like. And then once we understand that, we can build a strategy to actually make that actionable, right? And if you want to look into this deeper, I'm more than happy to sort of share this a little bit more depth with you if you want to look at it. So the second is aligning the organization. And there's a lot of points here, but there's a couple that I want to make. One is when you look at the organizational barriers that keep us from moving quickly and delivering product and value to our customers as quickly as a startup can or as some of these disruptors are. A lot of it is around legal, risk, regulatory teams and other folks who very legitimately want to have a say and need to have a say because we work in a big complex world. But what we see has been successful is how do we deeply integrate those folks or stakeholders from those folks with decision-making capabilities deeper into our delivery teams? How do we get them in those demos early so that they can see that risky, that risky product or feature that we're starting to roll out, so they can get that input in motion and not through a gate that happens 6 months later that then throws the whole thing up in the air, right? So it's about getting them involved early, getting them comfortable with what we're trying to do, and then getting insights from them vice versa. They're smart people. They're not the evil empire in the corner, right? They have good ideas around how to solve these problems, so get them a part of that process. The second is budgets, right? So I think a lot of us have seen this. Budgets for really critical projects within the enterprise happen from the IT department or from the marketing department or from some segmented department that doesn't have the visibility or doesn't have the ability to resource across teams, so that you end up sort of shoehorning it, like really shoelace budget. You're ultimately not successful because you don't have the buy-in from the IT team to really help you do this. You're not getting the proper resourcing. You're not getting the proper collaboration because they weren't a part of that budgeting process. So we've seen organizations who look at it from a more program level, more from the business and the outcomes and the customers you're trying to affect, and look at budgeting that way, because that sets you up as an organization for long-term success to do the right thing when it isn't just the IT team who's supposed to figure it out. With Aetna, that's a great example of some of the work that we did around integrating the legal and compliance review. They were a part of those meetings every day when we were redesigning their member portal. They were making suggestions and recommendations on how to present the dollar value more effectively, right? I don't want to get into a ton of the details, but they're having a lot of problems around how we could actually communicate the cost versus the value that you get in each plan that you're comparing. They had brilliant ideas on how to change it that none of us from the non-legal or compliance review didn't have. They uncover new insights, new interesting ways of thinking about solving that problem, and it keeps the momentum going, not a big gate that we have to all put the brakes on and then reinvent the wheel all over again based on the feedback that we get from them. And then finally, the team. We strongly advocate for not having this big design reveal, hand that design off to the technology team, and then get the business involved once we start to get a really good sense of where the design is going. We advocate for tightly integrated teams across even more than this, but design, technology, and stakeholders within the business. How do they participate day to day in being invested in the project success, and ultimately the project outcomes? If you're an agile organization, that's bringing them to maybe some stand-ups, maybe some of the retrospectives, maybe some of the share-outs. Whatever it is that makes sense for your business, how do you get them deeply involved in the process and not just be passive stakeholders, because that's where things get off the rails. And MWI, massive animal health care provider, a really good example of that. We help them orchestrate a whole bunch of different platform integrators, different program management, front-end development teams, back-end development teams, other business stakeholders, all to make them all ultimately aware of what we're doing, a part of the process, and ultimately feel connected to the successful outcome of the product that we were building for them. And you do that in person. There's a lot of great remote collaboration tools. There's a lot of opportunity we have here to really do great things together, but we're not doing it enough. So our point of view is how do you get these people together? How do you help them understand the restrictions, the limitations, the opportunities together as a larger team? When you boil it all out, it's about solving real business problems with beautiful functional applications. It's all about that. If we're all driven by that, all this other stuff will happen. It just means being intentional about it and working together as a team to be successful. So thank you.